Today we're going to look at a famous speech. I'm not going to tell you who gave this speech, but try to guess. It's a name you've definitely heard before. So let's start. Why are we doing this, by the way? Well, I think it's a great way to learn new vocabulary. Okay, ready? I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then I stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so before I really quit. So why did I drop out? He dropped out of college. He quit. He stopped studying. He didn't get a degree. People sometimes drop out of college or even high school, at least in the United States. In Europe, it's not possible to drop out of high school. It's a requirement that everyone has to fulfill. It started before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unwed graduate student, and she decided to put me up for adoption. Unwed means not married. We don't use this word anymore. It's an old-fashioned word. But here we have it. Graduate student. A graduate student is somebody who already has a bachelor's degree and is studying at a more advanced level. So basically somebody who's doing a master's degree. She decided to put me up for adoption, so she decided to start looking for new parents for me. She felt very strongly that I should be adopted by college graduates. So everything was all set for me to be adopted at birth by a lawyer and his wife. College graduates. A college graduate is somebody who has graduated from college, university. Everything was all set for me. All set, ready. Everything was ready. Except that when I popped out, they decided at the last minute that they really wanted a girl. So my parents, who were on a waiting list, got a call in the middle of the night asking, "We've got an unexpected baby boy. Do you want him?" They said, "Of course." No new words here, right? When I popped out, when I was born. My biological mother found out later that my mother had never graduated from college, and that my father had never graduated from high school. So his father was a high school dropout. He never graduated from high school. She refused to sign the final adoption papers. She only relented a few months later when my parents promised that I would go to college. This was the start in my life. Relented? She finally said yes. If somebody relents, they finally say yes after saying no. And 17 years later, I did go to college, but I naively chose a college that was almost as expensive as Stanford. And all of my working class parent savings were being spent on my college tuition. What's tuition? Tuition is the money you pay for your education. You don't always have to pay tuition. For example, you can have a scholarship. You can get a tuition waiver. In some countries, higher education is free. After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was, spending all of the money my parents had saved their entire life. So I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I jumped out, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked far more interesting. It wasn't all romantic. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. A dorm room, well, obviously a room in a dorm. A dorm is a place where students live. I returned Coke bottles for the 5 cent deposits to buy food with, and I would walk the 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at a soup kitchen. I loved it. A soup kitchen is a place where people can eat for free, especially people of limited means, people in need. And much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you one example. Stumbled into? Steve stumbled into stand-up comedy after college. It wasn't the plan to do stand-up comedy for him, but that's what he ended up doing. Reed College at that time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Calligraphy, beautiful writing. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label, on every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle, in a way that science can't capture. And I found it fascinating. Subtle, not easy to notice. None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me. And we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. Let's have a look at this sentence. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. Third conditional. Imaginary situations in the past. Let me just give you another third conditional sentence. Let's say you studied hard and that's why you passed a very important exam. So you can say, if I hadn't studied hard, I wouldn't have passed the exam. An imaginary situation in the past because you did study hard and you did pass the exam. But if you hadn't, you wouldn't have passed the exam. If I had never dropped out, I would have never dropped in on that calligraphy class. And personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do. If he hadn't dropped out of college, he wouldn't have taken that calligraphy course. This is a third conditional sentence. We're talking about an imaginary situation in the past, a situation that never happened. He did drop out of college, and that's what led him to the calligraphy course that he took. But if he hadn't dropped out of college, he wouldn't have taken the calligraphy course. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards, 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. you can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference. Now, this is the end of the story. Well-worn path. So it's a path, it's a road, it's a direction that a lot of people have taken before. And it leads you off the well-worn path. So it means that you're doing something that not many people have done before. I guess you know who this person is by now, right? Steve Jobs. I think the Macintosh sentence gave it away. I hope you were able to learn new vocabulary today. I think we had some interesting words and phrases. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. I enjoy reading them. Thanks for watching and see you next time.